welcome back to the Sabbath at Midnight. I'm Dominic Tavares, along with co-host Lionel Tavares. And tonight, we'd like to welcome back once again D.A. Roberts. And tonight's discussion will be on the Wendigo. D.A. Roberts, go ahead and give your information on how people can find you, your websites, your books, and everything else.
My name is D.A. Roberts. I've been into cryptozoology since I was a kid back in the 70s. I've explored Native American legends at great length. I'm a diehard researcher, I guess you could say. I write fiction, but I use real accounts and legends in the fiction, so to give it a much more realistic feel. You can find all of my books at daroberts.net or on Amazon. Most bookstores will either order them or have them in stock if you check there. But Amazon and my website always have them in stock. You can find my podcast that we do twice a week where we talk cryptids and monsters. The show's called DAX Machina, and we go live Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. and Saturday nights at 8 p.m. as well, Central Time.
Awesome. Yeah, I did catch your shows. I think you did one last night. I caught that one too. It was very interesting.
Yeah, we did one on cattle mutilations last night. It seemed pretty popular.
Yeah, it was. So getting into the Wendigo, it seems there are several schools of thought on the Wendigo. Some people say it's a possessed spirit, which causes cannibalism in people. It's connected with winter, hunger, famine, weakness. And the other school of thought is some people say it's a skinwalker. Or is it just a monster, period? I mean, what does your research say?
And what about, really quick, there's like two different looks. Like at one point it was described as a ghoul, really skinny, mm-hmm. almost like, the bone showing. And now it kind of looks like that, but bigger and stronger with the big deer antlers now. What changed, also from that to that? So I want to add
there's a few schools of thought on that. The Wendigo lore dates back to Native American tribes, the Algonquin, and a lot of the cold region Native American tribes share a very similar belief in this. There are numerous names for it: the Wendigo, the Wendiga, the Wentico, the Wentica. There's about a dozen different names.
Hello, DA, you there?
We lost your audio.
Let me see. Everything good? DA.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, something happened with the internet. I think it slowed down. Go ahead.
Okay, but it's the Wendigo is basically the spirit, the embodiment of famine. It appears most times in the deep dark winter when game is scarce, when food is running low. It's the spirit of starvation. And it is said to not only be a spirit in and of itself, but it can possess people. There is a psychological disorder they refer to as Wendigo psychosis, where people will have a psychotic break and begin eating flesh. And that actually happened back in, I think it was 1999, somewhere around in there, on the Trans-Canada Highway. A guy on a bus just freaked out and killed the guy sitting next to him and started eating him.
We actually saw a documentary on that for, we were doing our research on the podcast. And in that documentary, I saw that story. And there was another one where this Native American guy butchered his whole family and ate him. Did you hear about that one?
Yeah, that would have been the Swift Runner. That was the last execution of a Wendigo in Canada. Laws were put into place after that, but that guy was found guilty of being a Wendigo and of killing his family and executed.
That was a crazy story.
It is a really wild story. You want me to recap the story for your listeners?
Oh, go ahead.
Basically, this Native American named Swift Runner stumbled into a trading post just at the end of winter and said that his family had all died because of the harsh weather, and he wasn't that far from the trading post, and they noticed that he was not exactly, shall we say, starving. He had gained weight during the winter. He didn't lose weight, and he said his family had died of starvation because they had no food. And when they returned to his cabin, they found that his family had been butchered and eaten, and there were even like human teeth marks on the bones. He was tried and found guilty of not only murder but of being a Wendigo and was executed. So it's one of the most more famous cases, especially when it involves somebody actually being put down for it. But the Wendigo, it's the embodiment of pure hunger, like ravenous starvation. And I think the explanation for why that you have the one that most people think of, the classic image with the antlers and the gaunt face, is I think the one with the antlers and the gaunt face is the true Wendigo, the true spirit, and the others are lesser that have become corrupted either by this Wendigo psychosis or by infection from the spirit. But I don't think the actual spirit can be killed. I think it's a demon of starvation, a demon of hunger, and I don't think it can actually be killed, but the lesser ones can.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So you're saying like these the little ghoulish looking ones are like, you know, like people that may be physically transformed because of the evil or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the one with the antlers are like the boss. They're the ones
Right.
they're the ones giving the virus out, you know, so to say, of the Wendigo.
Right. It's said that people can become a Wendigo by consuming human flesh. It's a curse. I think the ones that you see that are gaunt and drawn, very much like the rake. And I think the rake may be a type of Wendigo, but that's another story. But I think the ones that we see that look like skeletal humans with, you know, maybe missing lips, and it said they'll chew their own lips off. And like gnaw their fingers to the bone. They will be so starving they will eat their own flesh. I think those are the ones that are people that became corrupted by the curse. But again, the one with the antlers, I think that is the true Wendigo spirit, and that's the one you can't kill. Various tribes have. When I was researching my book, Curse of the Wendigo, Codename Wild Hunt, Curse of the Wendigo, I was researching Native American lore on how they were killed, and there's a dozen different stories on how to kill one. Some say the heart has to be cut out with a silver knife and burned separately from the body. Others say can be killed by fire. But there are a lot of different methods that different tribes say that you have to complete to kill it. But they all seem to involve some sort of fire. No matter what they say about how you have to cut the heart out or sever the head or anything like that, it all involves fire in the end. So ultimately in my book, they had to immolate them, to completely burn to kill the Wendigo creatures.
Wow. Are the Wendigos, are they connected to other indigenous tribes? Are they talked about throughout the Native American people?
There's a lot of lore on the Wendigo, and they've been cited as far south as Colorado, throughout the Canadian Rockies, even up in the Appalachian Mountains. So they're being seen in farther south than the original lore. The original lore had them up in the Algonquin and the Canadian mountains north of the border where the winters got really bad. But in recent years, there have been sightings in Colorado and along the Appalachian Trail. But you mentioned earlier about them being related to a skinwalker. I don't think they're the same thing. A skinwalker is a shaman who has done something so corrupt that it's polluted their soul. They've sacrificed their soul for power. But they can take the form of anything. A Wendigo is just that. That's what it remains.
Okay, so the people that become Wendigo, do you think that's possibly maybe something they ate, a contaminated food, a prion, and a disease, which causes all kinds of psychosis? What's your take on that?
Well, the legend itself states that they have to have consumed human flesh, but there's also Wendigo possession, where just someone randomly becomes possessed by the spirit of the Wendigo. It's generally, if it's something eaten, it has to be tied to human flesh. That taboo of eating human flesh. But there are even cases where people who had not eaten human flesh just became corrupted and then began eating people.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. I'm just trying to wrap my brain around this, because we have people that are possessed with the Wendigo spirit, and there's creatures that are actually Wendigo. I'm wondering if this belief system is allows people to maybe conjure up these things, like when they're under duress, stress, hunger, all those things that stress entails. I wonder if they're cognitively, I don't want to say they're imagining these things, but they're calling them forth by the belief system. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, basically, the concept of believing in something and bringing it forth simply through belief is called a tulpa. But I don't think wendigos are tulpas. I think you can call them down on you mistakenly. Especially if you live in some place where it's a very harsh winter and food is scarce. I think they will specifically target people under that kind of duress. But I don't think it's something that anybody would try to summon. It's something it's a cultural taboo among the native tribes. And anytime these things appear, it's never a good thing. It is always corruption. It is always the corruption of the body of the person that becomes possessed. It always involves the death of tribe members or people going missing in the woods. Another thing they say about the Wendigo is it is capable of, well, one, great speed and mimicry. They say if you hear your own name being called from the deep woods at night, don't answer it. Don't go. It's trying to draw you out.
That is creepy. That's creepy. Do you have any reports on that? People hearing, coming to you say, "Oh yeah, I heard this voice calling me. It was my name, and I saw a Wendigo."
I also read about.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
I know a couple of Bigfoot researchers who have had that happen to them. They've heard their name like a guttural whispering, like that kind of thing from the deep woods, and they're like, "Nope, not going out there." But they never saw it. But then there are other. There was an account that happened. I believe it was in southern Illinois. The Native Americans say don't whistle after dark. Do not whistle after dark because it will attract it. There was a young lady. She was part Native American. She was living in a house in the woods, and she let her dog out to go to the bathroom. And she was waiting and waiting. It was pretty chilly, and the dog kept staying out. So she just whistled for the dog. Well, a few seconds later, the dog comes hightailing it, and she saw red eyes coming at her in through the woods. So she runs back in the house, bolts the door, and she sees this big, gaunt, emaciated figure circling her house the rest of the night. And it keeps coming back. So after several nights of this thing coming back, she gets a hold of her grandmother, who knows one of the elders that comes to her house and blesses it, and it drives the Wendigo away. Her grandmother told her, "This is why we tell you not to whistle in the woods after dark."
That sounds like a lot of nope to me. Okay, because all those red eyes circling the house, that would terrify me.
I hate red eyes. That's crazy.
I've seen a lot of eye shine in the woods over the years. I've been a deer hunter, and I've hunted pretty much everything you can hunt in Missouri. I grew up in and out of the woods. I've seen a ton of eye shine, but it's only been a few times I've seen something where you just get that prickly feeling on the back of your neck. You're like, that's not natural. I've had that happen a few times, and that's the point where you just back out of the area. If you ever encounter something like that, don't run from it. Don't turn and run. Don't show it your back, because that engages a predator response. That even works with like mountain lions and bears.
I was about to say that.
If you run from a predator, they will chase you.
They will. Let me ask you really quick, DA. You said there was a few times where your hair stood up. Was there any of those times where you actually saw something, or is it more like that feeling? Because I've had that feeling where I don't see nothing, but everything goes silent. The crickets stop going. Yeah. The birds, everything, whatever's going on, everything goes silent, and you just feel that something is watching you, and it has nothing but evil intent.
I've had the woods go dead silent around me a number of times. That's those moments when you're like, would you look at the time? It's time to start backing out of here. My only visual sighting was of a dog man in land between the lakes, Kentucky. Saw it for about 15 seconds before it took off.
That's a long time. What did it look like?
Got a good long look at it. But I've never seen a Wendigo, but I know I've come very close to a Bigfoot on a number of occasions. I've yet to have an actual visual sighting of a Bigfoot. I've seen all the classic signs. I mean, you've seen tracks. I've seen tree structures. I've seen limb breaks. I've had a deer kill stolen. I think we talked about that the last time I was on. So I've had very close brushes with Bigfoot on a number of occasions. But my one sighting is of a dog man. I've never seen a Wendigo, but I think I might have been close to one once. It was one of those times when the woods go dead silent. I was tracking a deer, and I found the deer. Was field dressing it out and getting ready to drag it out of there. And I just got this feeling like I was being watched. And it was daylight. It was broad daylight, but it was really cold. And I stopped what I was doing. And I started listening, and just all I could hear through the trees was the whistling of the rustling of the wind. So I'm looking around and I don't see anything moving, and I'm checking every direction. And at this point, I'm like, I need to get out of here. But I got to get this deer out of here too. I'm not going to leave it. So I took some heavy twine and tied the hind legs together and drooped the twine over my shoulder, and I started dragging it. And as I was dragging the deer out, I would hear like something like rustling. So I'd stop, and then there wouldn't be anything. And I was like, oh, it's probably just the wind. But at the same time, there's still no sound. Nothing's going on around me. And I'm like, this is just so bizarre. Fortunately, I was only about 100 yards from my truck. So I go back to dragging, and then I heard it clear. And it sounded almost like either sticks knocking together or deer antlers knocking together. It was that rattle. And I froze, and I know, we use deer antlers, to rattle together to get bucks' attention, and it was very similar to that, but there were no, any deer in the area would have cleared out as soon as I shot that first one. So I'm looking around, I don't see anything, and I looking around again, and I've got my rifle, I pull my rifle up, and I'm looking around, and I don't see anything, and I'm still not hearing anything move when I'm not moving. And then I heard it distinct while I was sitting still, and it felt like it was coming toward me, like it was coming through the trees, and it was something like antlers rattling against tree branches, that kind of thing. And I turned around and I took off, just as leaned into it just as fast as I could go, and got the deer to the truck, threw it in the bed of the truck, and hauled ass out of there. But I think something was stalking me. As to what it is, can't say. It's one of those moments where I felt like I was in grave danger and needed to get the hell out of there. But I did not see anything. But it was considering that the Ozark Mountains are very old, and it was a dead of winter. There was no snow on the ground, but it was very, very cold. I firmly believe it was something like a Wendigo, that something wanted that kill.
That's a crazy story. Have you heard anything on the lines of shaman when they do their ceremony and ritual? Do you believe that they have actually called forth the Wendigo? And if so, why would they call the Wendigo?
I've never heard of a shaman trying to summon one. I've heard of shaman working together to try to keep one away. I've never heard of anyone deliberately trying to summon one. There are lots of stories of these things, taking people from camps or catching lone travelers. The Wendigo sightings are pretty numerous, and they date back centuries. And again, they're starting to see it even in modern times along like the Appalachian Trail. There's a Girl Scout camp in northern Colorado in the Rockies that was abandoned because they kept seeing one in the trees near the camp. You would tell the Girl Scouts, don't leave your cabin after dark. And they finally stopped sending people, letting Girl Scouts go to the camp. I've got a friend that lives out in Colorado, and he told me, he says, I know right where it's at, and as soon as you get a chance to get out here, we're going to go up there and check it out. And we'll take four-wheelers and go check the place out. So I've got a plan in the near future for us to go explore that old Girl Scout camp to see if we can find something. But that was the reason they abandoned the camp. There was also a scout camp somewhere in Canada. I can't remember where it was, but two brothers saw one looking in the window of their cabin, and then they saw it again as they were heading to the like the mess tent, or not tent, but the cabin where everybody ate. They saw it like in the trees watching them, and it's something that I would, especially if I was a kid, I'd be absolutely terrified because these things are so notoriously hard to kill.
Yeah, that's frightening. Seeing those, looking at you through the window. With most supernatural encounters, with regard to the Wendigo, are there reports that there's a dramatic drop in temperature that would more than likely fall under thermodynamics when it's pulling power, energy from a space to another space? Are there any temperature drops talked about when the Wendigo appears?
Well, generally, the Wendigo only appears in harsh winters. So, if you could correlate one with the other, in some of the Algonquin legends, they believe the Wendigo can control the weather. again, I don't know if that's true or not, if that's just legend. But again, they do only appear in the harsh winters. You don't see them in summer times. You don't see them during times of plenty. You see them when the game is scarce and when food is scarce. Um, but I don't really think a Wendigo is a cryptid. I think a Wendigo is purely supernatural. I think it's a demonic forest entity. It's the embodiment of starvation, and it can infect and create lesser Wendigos. But the true Wendigo, I don't think, can be killed.
Mm.
Yeah, that's pretty along the lines what I believe in when it comes to the spiritual realm. I definitely do think it's like you said, it's like an entity that is not from this realm, and it comes in whenever, whatever it needs to get in here. It sounds like to me like that the negative energy that it needs is when there's starvation. And in my opinion, like just based on what you said, it has to be some kind of spirit that needs that negative energy to be summoned into our world.
Yeah.
And possess people or whatever it's doing.
Right. And for me, that brings up CERN. We know that CERN requires massive energy to tap in. They're trying to tap into other dimensions.
They already did. No, they said they already opened a dimension.
Okay, so that requires a lot of energy. So when my research, it says when the Wendigo appears, there's smoke or mist. Could this possibly be a portal opening? And if so, I mean, we can only speculate how they do this.
I heard that about the Dogman too on Skinwalker Ranch. They said one of the guys that I forgot what episode I was watching. He said he saw the Dogman, but before he saw it, he said he saw a glowing orb, and the orb got really bright. And then when the brightness dimmed down, there was the Dogman right in front of him.
When it comes to Skinwalker Ranch, I don't think that's a true dogman. I think dogmen are physical forms. I think they're a physical creature. I think what's haunting them is probably a skinwalker itself. A skinwalker can take that form. I don't think it's
a portal thing. Like I was,
yeah, definitely. I think they're summoning it somehow. What they're dealing with is probably mystical on multiple levels. It's an old Navajo curse over that whole region, anyway. So I think that falls more in line with a skinwalker than it does with the actual dogmen. Not to say that dogmen can't show up there, but like in the case of the family that originally owned the ranch, they said that one gigantic wolf came walking in, and it was so friendly they were petting it. And petting this wolf, and then it attacked their cattle. That's not a dogman. They would not have pet a dogman. That dogman would have ripped them apart. That was a skinwalker that was letting them get in close.
So it seems like the Wendigo is using some type of portal then, in my opinion. And I viewed a documentary on a Wendigo sighting, and the witness identified what was a UFO. And they saw the Wendigo run across the street, and they identified it as a tall gray. I mean, is it a possibility that the Wendigo is, a tall gray? And another question is, do you believe that the Wendigo, the one with the antlers, is wearing that as a helmet, a skull of a deer with antlers, like, for example, like a warrior, like a Viking, like the kings, like the Sumerians, this and that? Have you looked into that or have any thoughts?
Me personally, I don't think Wendigo are aliens. I think like we were saying, I think it's a demonic origin. This is just my opinion. Right. One thing I like to say on my show, and I will reiterate it here, there are no experts in this field. Anybody that claims they're an expert selling you something, or just take my opinion with a grain of salt. If you disagree with it, you are 100% entitled to your opinion. This is just what my research would suggest, what my personal opinion is based on things I've observed and things I've read. But I don't think it's alien in origin. I think it's more demonic in origin. I think it's paranormal, not extraplanetary. And mainly because it can affect and infect people like Swiftrunner, like the guy on the bus in Canada. They were infected by it. They weren't an alien. They were just a normal person living their life until bam, it hit them. But what you bring up about the skull being possibly a mask, that's actually the route I went with in my book. That it was the skull of an elk that it was wearing like a mask. But I think since it is demonic, I think it can exhibit that either as a mask or as an actual affectation, the horns and everything, simply because it ratchets up the amount of fear.
Hmm. Yeah, I wondered about that. If it was wearing a helmet, like the ancient warriors.
Well, if you look at the Norse Wild Hunt, the master of the Wild Hunt had a massive horned head,
Right.
horned rack like a deer. Was that a horn or was that actually part of it? Who knows? Quernos, the Celtic god, was known as the horned god. He had the horns of a stag. So there's lots of references across the world of entities, godlike entities, or even feared entities that had this type of horned helmet or horns growing from their head. So there's precedent for it in other places, and it makes me wonder, especially when we're talking about Cuernos and the Wild Hunt, because the Wild Hunt is rumored to sweep through the land during the winter and basically just gather up everything in its path, killing anything that it runs across. And people get called in and drawn into the hunt. So that almost seems like another interpretation of the Wendigo. So I'm wondering if the Wendigo is not necessarily tied purely to Native American folklore, but it might be something that shows up anywhere that there is these cold climates, and the spirit of starvation could be anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. Is the Wendigo related to the Arabic ghoul?
I don't know. I'm not as versed on Arabic lore as I am on the North American and Native American lore. But it's something I've begun studying a bit more because the Arabic lore on the Middle Eastern Bigfoot is called the Barmanu, and it's something I started studying because of that. So I'm beginning to get more into Arabic lore, but it's still something I've just scratched the surface of. But I think the ghoul is something different. I think it's a corrupted spirit. I don't think it was demonic to begin with. I think it's just something very much like in our culture, a zombie.
Hmm. So besides the United States, has the Wendigo been reported in other countries that you know of?
Canada.
There have been like in Celtic lore and Scandinavian lore of something similar to it, but I don't know if it's exactly the same thing. But I think it is something that can cross borders. It certainly has come across the U.S. Canadian border. Who knows? There might even be something similar down in the Andes. Well, for example, that soccer team that crashed in the Andes and to stay alive. Who knows if that's not something that was at play there. So again, where it can and can't go, I couldn't say. But the bulk of my knowledge of the Wendigo is from Native American lore.
Mm. So the Wendigo, it's a spiritual entity, and what I understand, it's killed by removing the heart or burning, etc. But I mean, they're just killing a physical body. I mean, how do you? I mean, you really can't kill a spiritual being.
True, and that's why I think that there's one true Wendigo, and the ones that you can kill are lesser forms of the Wendigo. People that have become corrupted by the spirit of the Wendigo, people who have consumed human flesh and become this lesser Wendigo. The actual Wendigo spirit itself, I believe, is a nature spirit, a demon of the woods, if you will. And so I don't think a true Wendigo can be killed. But since the others are such a corruption, it makes sense that the purification of fire would be involved in killing them.
Yeah, that's another thing. The whole Wendigo psychosis, for me, it seems to be a misnomer because we see throughout the ancient world of cannibalism, and even today, some untouched areas of the world, these people still practice cannibalism. So. Calling it a Wendigo psychosis, I don't know where that derived from, because there's been cannibalism throughout the ancient world and even today.
But it was a little different, though, when that documentary we saw, these people were normal at one point, and then they suddenly became cannibals. It wasn't like they were raised in this cannibalistic culture. A lot of those stories that I read, they were normal families. They were normal families. They never thought about eating a human bone or human flesh in their life. And then all of a sudden, they become cannibals and go completely off their meds. So I think it's different than a cultural thing.
Yeah, demonic possession.
Well, it has to be.
Yeah.
I think Wendigo psychosis might be a modern psychological attempt to explain something that they were encountering in the deep woods,
Right.
centuries ago, and had no way to explain why it was doing it. But this doesn't forego the possibility that modern Wendigo psychosis just might be them trying to explain Wendigo possession. Or it could be vice versa. It could be people from the past who are trying to explain Wendigo psychosis when they had no idea what a psychotic break was. So, which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. But I think considering how far back this lore goes and how difficult these things are to kill once corrupted, I think we're looking at more of a supernatural source than a psychological explanation.
Right. Right. It's a good explanation.
But just to be like, like to have a psychotic break, like I think it's a little different that all these people are just, their psychotic break is going straight to eating people. Like usually when people have psychotic breaks, they don't want to eat anybody.
I've worked in a hospital setting as working for security, and of course we would get called in anytime they would have violent people. And I've seen people in the middle of psychotic breaks, and you never know what their focus is going to be. I mean, for one person it might be biting, another person it might be trying to gouge out your eye. I mean, when the violence kicks in, you just don't know what they're going to do. They're very unpredictable, and a person in the midst of a true psychotic break, it's just, you have no idea what they're going to do, what their direction is going to be. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum where people are true psychopaths. And those are the people that become serial killers. How do you explain that? How do you, that exists in our DNA somewhere? There's some mental switch that's flipped that turns someone who's completely rational into a serial killer. So we can't explain that either, yet we know it exists. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that this is just something that just happens. Like it's a psychosis that we just can't explain. We can't explain psychopathy. We can't explain psychopaths. We can't explain why people are sociopaths. It's just how they are. It's how their brain's wired. It is entirely possible that somebody can be completely normal until one day that little switch is flipped and suddenly they're dining on their neighbor.
Yeah, psychology is a deep, so it's a rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah.
Now, is the Wendigo, is it a day hunter or is it nocturnal in your research?
I've read sightings both day and night. What I felt like was stalking me was in broad daylight when I was dragging my deer. But I don't think it's really preferential. I would say it probably would be more active at night because it's much harder for us to see them than it is for them to see us. Kind of like with Bigfoot. I don't think they're Bigfoot or nocturnal, not truly nocturnal. I just think they have better night vision than we are, so it's much easier to sneak up on people in the dark. Same with Dogman. We know animals have better night vision than humans. So it would only make sense that a predator would hunt at night if its prey couldn't see it back. So it's again, it's one of those flip a coin. You don't know whether or not it's truly nocturnal or it just likes to hunt in the dark because it has the advantage. Right. But there are numerous sightings of Wendigo that have happened during the day, including those kids at the scout camp that I mentioned. They saw it in the broad daylight.
Wow. Now, you touched on Bigfoot mimicking people's voices. Does a Wendigo have that capability?
Yeah.
It's been said the Wendigo will try to lure you out. They'll call your name in the woods. Make the sound of a crying baby. Do things that would draw people away from their campfire, away from the fire, and out into the darkness where they're easy prey. The Wendigo are definitely ambush predators. They're very, very intelligent. They will lure you out away from everybody and take you out. So if you're in the woods, especially at night, and you hear if you know somebody that is with you that is not in that direction, but you hear their voice call your name, probably an idea not to go toward it.
Yeah, yeah, right, for sure. Now, have you heard any reports on the dog man battling with the Wendigo? Any witnesses?
I have never heard of an encounter with Dogman versus Wendigo. There's a movie called Dawn of the Beast that has Bigfoot fighting Wendigo, but I've never heard an encounter where somebody stated that a Wendigo was fighting a cryptid. I've never taken a report like that or read one.
Yeah, I would pay a pay-per-view to watch that.
Good movie.
Yeah, it sounds good. I have to check that out. Is a shaman the only one that can detect, the Wendigo, the main one, the boss?
Again, hard to say. I've never heard anything that said one way or the other on that. But a shaman would be the one that could force it away. And whether or not you can actually kill it or not, right. I think depends entirely on what type of Wendigo it is. If it's the true Wendigo, you're probably only going to be able to drive it off. If it's a possessed person, a lesser Wendigo, then cutting its heart out or even just setting it on fire would probably do the trick.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, do you believe the darkness now that's overcoming this world, and we see it from narcissism, self-loathing, materialism, the prosperity gospel, greed? Do you think these are some of the reasons why people are reporting more and more seeing cryptids? Is this veil being removed by, the darkness that's overcoming this world, in your opinion?
Well, I think that certainly these sightings of these types of creatures are on the rise. And I don't think that's just because the internet has made it easier to report it. We've had the internet for a good long time now, but it's only in the last 4 or 5 years when sightings have really started on the uptick. Could it be a thinning of the veil? Could it be a sign of end times? Very well could be. I mean, I'm not a religious scholar, but I do follow the cryptid sightings, and I have noticed a trend in the last few years: a great deal more sightings and a great deal more aggressive sightings.
Yeah, the reason why I asked that, because this is a spiritual war, whatever your beliefs are. I think, in my opinion, we're going to start seeing more and more of these things. We're seeing more UFOs. We're seeing more cryptids. We're seeing hearing about alien abductions on the mainstream. Fetuses being removed, this and that. We see all these crazy things going on now, and we see the way the world is, the state of it. Now, for the Wendigo, what is it's said that silver can possibly kill it too. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, one version of the legend talks about cutting its heart out with a silver knife,
right?
And then you have to burn the heart separately from the body. But in other versions, there's no mention of silver whatsoever. The one uniting factor that I found among different versions of the legend in order to kill one is fire.
Wow.
Yeah, purify it.
I don't know if a silver dagger would work. I don't know if a silver bullet would work. But one thing that all the legends agree on is fire works.
Now, these things are described, their heart is described as ice, right? What are these things, ice giants? Or, it sounds really strange.
It could be, but then again, we're talking about a possible demonic source. The heart could just be shriveled and black and encrusted in ice. And we're talking about a creature that's no longer truly alive in extreme Arctic conditions. Yeah, everything's going to be frozen.
Now, when a shaman, when they're defending against the Wendigo, are there any reports of them losing, their own, self perceptions of what's going around, around them? Did they lose their selves while they're doing this?
I have not heard of anything like that. I think that would be more along the skinwalker line, where a shaman would cross over into dark magic and then be drawn in. But with the Wendigo, it's mostly ritual and burning of the right elements to keep it at bay. There's really never a direct confrontation between the Wendigo spirit and the shaman itself. It's more of you doing blessings to drive it off.
Right.
I think if somebody was going to be drawn into the darkness through the battle, it would probably be a shaman that was engaging and fighting against a skinwalker.
Right. Okay. Now, Where's Wendigo most likely located in the U.S.? Where are the biggest sightings?
Well, the primary sightings originally were in the deep mountains during extreme harsh winters. They were seen throughout Canada, throughout the Rockies, but of late there have been sightings in the Rocky Mountains as far south as Colorado. They've been sighted in Maine along the Appalachian Trail. In fact, I think I even read a couple of sightings that were in the mountains of Georgia, but again, they were in the wintertime.
Mm. Well, that's so you don't believe that the Wendigo is like a nomadic thing, right? You think it stays centralized to mountainous areas?
Well, it's a creature that seems to thrive on the cold. It's associated with starvation during the
Right.
lean times of winter. So I would say that your most likely places of seeing one are places that are most affected by the cold, and that would be your mountainous regions. That's not to say it couldn't be anywhere else. Any place here in the United States, as long as you're like north of Florida, is capable of having extreme winters, especially the northern states, Alaska, Minnesota, Wyoming, all of the states right along the Canadian border tend to see pretty rough winters. So it's entirely possible it can be seen anywhere through there. It can be seen here in Missouri, the Ozark Mountains. I think it would just depend on the time of year and your location correlation to where this thing could thrive. It would have to be a cold weather environment.
Okay, that makes sense.
And if it's a spiritual creature, it's not like it's got to wait for the winter to travel to you.
Right.
I think just really go wherever it wanted to go as long as the conditions were right.
What's the Wendigo described as? Like, how tall is it? What are the features of the fingers, the feet, the eyeballs? I think you touched on the eyeballs.
A lot of them are described as man-sized. They appear gray-skinned, extremely gaunt. In some cases, they've reported of like chewed their own lips off or eaten the flesh from their fingers. Might have chunks of flesh missing from their arms. But the unifying description there is they're extremely gaunt because they're always starving. The greater Wendigo, the demonic one, the one with the antlers, I've heard it described as being like a gaunt, like decaying deer that walks on its hind legs. I've heard it described as being an upright person, just with the deer-like antlers, and as tall as 10 or 11 feet.
Wow.
A lot of widely different descriptions, but it really boils down to the same creature. And the one that they talk about that has the deer form almost looks like it has the head like a deer, only the teeth are big and sharp, and instead of hooves in the front, it's got hands. It walks very spindly. So yeah, these. But the thing is they always appear gaunt. They always appear starving, and they what's the word I'm looking for? Again, they appear very emaciated. They're always hungry. But if somebody's taken by a Wendigo, they're not always killed immediately because these things will stalk larders and caves in dark climates where they will have food to last through the harsh winter. There are cases of them attacking ungulates like elk, deer, moose, bison. There's lots of reports of them taking animals or people finding animals that have basically been completely gutted. So yeah, it's not like they're confined to just killing people, but that does seem to be one of the causations of people becoming a Wendigo themselves is that crossing that cultural taboo of eating human flesh.
Yeah, for sure. It's like a ritual almost. Do you believe the Vatican is aware of these creatures? Do you think they hunt them down?
I think the Vatican's been aware of a lot of creatures like this for a very long time. I think our government has been aware.
It's a question.
There were rumors that the Vatican had a team that hunted monsters. They kind of hinted at it in the movie Van Helsing, but that was based on a real legend. Supposedly, that dated back to the Roman legion. I can't remember what the Latin word for was for it. It was like the Brotherhood of the Night or something like that. They were a group of highly trained centurions that went after monsters. Both the Roman Empire and the Greeks talked of the cynocephalus, dog-headed warriors that they faced in both northern Africa and in India. So I think they were aware of monsters for a very long time. I think the Vatican still hunts them. I think it's a part of the Jesuit order. People have long since called the Jesuits the Holy Roman Empire's hit squad. The Jesuits are basically the shock troops for the Catholic Church. Those guys are highly trained. Those are the guys that do the exorcisms. Those are the guys that will go out and actively hunt demonic possessions. So if there's a team like that the Vatican has, it falls under the order of the Jesuits, and God knows what's locked in the archives of the Vatican.
I'd like to dig down that. Those
I would love this, but it's like pulling teeth to get access to the Vatican's archives.
Isn't there a library about 50 miles long underground? 50 miles or 50 miles worth of something like that.
Yeah,
that's massive.
I've heard it is just massive. That fills catacombs beneath the Vatican.
Huge library.
That's crazy. And no one gets down there.
Who knows? They probably have bones down there. Probably got the giants down there. I think so.
Probably. I'm sure they do. They have a lot of things that are hidden. They may even have the technology that the pyramids once had on the land. Who knows? Do you believe the Wendigo, with it mimicking people's voices, is a trickster spirit?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Do you believe the Wendigo is a trickster spirit?
Maybe, but again, I don't think it's a trickster per se, like the Native American belief in coyote.
Having some technical difficulties.
Methods to lure prey out.
Okay, can you repeat that? You cut off for about 10 seconds.
Oh, sorry about that. I don't think Wendigo are tricksters themselves, but they will trick you to get you away and prey on you.
Wow. Now, we're hearing more and more about mutilations of cattle and sheep and stuff like that. Do you believe the Wendigo has something to do with this?
In some cases, yes. When you look at the subject of cattle mutilations, and again, we just did a show on this last night. There are lots of different things that are happening, but they're all getting lumped in with cattle mutilations. For example, there was in the UK. It was in Ireland. It was 70 some sheep. I think it was 77, 78 sheep were killed, and all of them were pregnant females, and they claimed it was wild dogs. Wild dogs aren't going to differentiate and only single out the pregnant ones. That doesn't make any sense. But then there was the case, one of the cases here in the U.S., I believe it was in Kansas, where 80 head of cattle vanished overnight. The owner of the farm, of the ranch, that they were in the field just behind his house. That's 80 head of cattle is 2 tractor trailer loads of cattle. He heard nothing, and there were no tracks, no nothing. They were just gone. So I don't think there's any one explanation on what's happening during cattle mutilations, but I think in some of the cases where animals been, like in Meeker, Colorado, when I think it was 80 head of cattle, no, it was 50 head of cattle, were killed. Some of them were badly mutilated and had pieces missing, and others were just dead. And they said that the ones that had been killed showed signs of canine predation, but the bite marks were way too big to be a known canine, even wolves. So they're saying it's some sort of canine, but at the same time, the bite marks are too big to be a known canine. So could cryptids take a role in some of these cattle mutilations? Yes, very much so. I think so. I think a lot of these are, very bizarre circumstances. It could definitely be cryptid or Wendigo related. But then others where you've got parts that are missing with surgical precision, with no blood, and the wounds are cauterized, that's not a cryptid. That's something could possibly be alien, could be government experimentation. But I don't know if the government wanted to experiment on cattle. I don't know why they wouldn't just show up at the farmer and say, hey, we want to buy 10 of your cows. And then drive off with them and experiment at will. I don't understand why the government would need to sneak onto a farm and kill 5 head of cattle out of this herd, and then leave these cauterized wounds for people to find. If our government really wanted to do something like that, I think they would just make it disappear, and we would never know they were doing the experiments. So I think something more sinister is involved in the cases where the wounds are cauterized. Could it be a UFO? Yeah, it could be entirely possible.
Yeah, that brings back the lady who I watched a documentary. I forget I don't know what was on. Maybe it was Missing 411. I don't know. But she saw that UFO with what she only can describe as a tall gray, and she called it a Wendigo.
Well, the physical like pallor of the skin for a gray or a Wendigo is very similar. They're both ashen gray, but I think that's where the similarities begin and end, because the grays are usually depicted as having those oblong heads with the big bulbous eyes, and that's not a description of a Wendigo. The Wendigo, their face is going to be gaunt. The eye sockets are going to be sunken and hollow. They're going to have sharpened teeth. They're going to have missing bits of flesh. So I think the only similarity that the grays have with the Wendigo begins and ends at the color of the skin.
Mm. Yeah, either one. I don't want to see. Now, people,
why not?
I don't want to see a Wendigo. I don't want to see an alien gray either. I've seen other things, but that was enough for me. Now, some people say that they have crossed over to other realms and come back. I guess you could want to call it a sixth sense.
Enlightened.
Yeah, enlightened, I guess. Do you think they're more susceptible to seeing these things than someone who doesn't believe at all? Or do you have reports of people see them anyways, regardless of what's happened to them in their lives? If they crossed over at one point, or they're astral planing experiments, whatever, would the general person just who doesn't believe in any of this stuff see one?
Well, there are lots of cases of hunters who have spent their entire lives in the woods and never seen anything cryptid related. But then you get your people that have said, I've spent 20 years, 30 years in the woods and didn't believe in these things until one day there one was, and it changes their entire paradigm. Much like with ghosts or with something malevolent, something demonic, or even something cryptids, I think we've conditioned ourselves our whole lives and we've been told since we were kids that monsters aren't real and those things don't exist. And we've convinced ourselves in this very comfortable world we live in that these kind of creatures don't exist. But when you see one, it cracks that door open. And once you see one, you start noticing other things. And I think that is the best possible explanation on why some people, once they've seen one, they start seemingly seeing Bigfoot in other locations and things like that, is because you're opened yourselves up to the possibility of them being there. You now believe those things are there. You're now looking for things that you would normally have just dismissed because that's not possible. That couldn't happen. I don't know if it's a snowball effect from seeing it once, or your brain, kind of opening the door to the possibility that they exist,
right,
or if it's something like you were saying, like they might just be more susceptible. My wife, if there's something spiritual, if there's a ghost, something like that, we go to a haunted location, she picks up on it right away, and I'm like, really cool architecture. I don't know. I don't notice stuff like that, but she is just absolutely keyed in. My youngest son takes that from her. He's the same way. We go to some place like the Crescent Hotel down in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. That's one of the most haunted locations in the U.S., and they both pick up on it right away. And I'm like, man, this is a really cool old hotel. I just don't pick up on it. But you get me out in the woods, and I notice sign of possible cryptids where most people would just go, oh, that's an absolutely nothing. They'd blow it off. But you've got to really not only open yourself up to the possibility, but you've got to know in your mind that what you're looking for is real. If you don't believe it's real, you're going to dismiss even obvious signs until one's in your face going, hey, I think I'm fake now. But somebody pointed out to me something that I had never really thought of before. It's like, for example, let's say all your life you've driven pickups, okay? And one day you go out and buy a shiny new SUV. And suddenly you see SUVs like yours all over town when you never noticed them before. It's just something that now you're aware of something, you're seeing it more often. We had a minivan forever. We drove it until I was hit by a intoxicated driver last year and destroyed the van. Well, we bought a Nissan Rogue. I never paid attention to Nissan Rogues, and now I spot them all the time. I'm like, hey, honey, there's a Nissan Rogue, same color as ours. Sorry about that, an alarm going off. But now I spot them everywhere, and it's not like they were just hidden before. I just never looked for them. And I think it's very similar in the cryptid world. I think you're going to encounter more things once you become accustomed to their presence. Once you're aware of cryptids in the field, you're going to look for the presence of more cryptids in the field. Once you're aware of spiritual entities, you're going to become more aware of the evidence of their presence. So I don't necessarily think it's that people are one day just waking up to it. I think that once you've become accustomed to it, you're going to see it more.
Well, good luck for those people who see this thing, because I don't want to see it.
That's one thing I definitely don't want to run into in the woods. I don't think I pack enough firepower.
I watched this movie. I don't know if you've seen it, DA. It's called Antlers.
I have seen that.
That's crazy, man.
You got to watch The Curse, though.
Pretty weird movie.
Yeah.
I liked it, though.
Yeah, it was creepy. Here's a little excerpt from Lottie Marsden. It says a Wendigo not need lose the human's powers of cognition or speech. In some depictions, may clearly communicate with its prospective victims or even threaten or taunt them. A specimen of folk story collected in the 20th century by the author I just named, an ethnographer of the, hope I don't butcher this, Chippewas Rama First Nations, in which Wendigo also exhibits tool use, an ability to survive partial dismemberment and auto-cannibalism. Like what?
Auto-cannibalism would be eating themselves.
Yeah. It exhibits tool use. It's just, what?
They're very smart. I mean, they're not just some mindless monster running around the woods eating people. They were once people. So they're going to maintain some rudimentary intelligence. There's going to be a spark of intelligence there. And considering that their preferred prey is human, they're going to have to be at the top of the game to hunt the number one tool user on the planet.
Yeah. And here's another story. Did you hear about the one with the Wendigo that stole an Indian boy? And it was trying to fatten him up. And it told him to go into the village and, to eat and to get more meat on his bones. And I guess the boy told the tribe what was going on, and they cut the Wendigo's legs off, and when they went back, the Wendigo was sucking the cut off legs, the bone marrow out. It was eating itself.
Yeah, it's not going to waste a meal. I mean, if its legs are no longer attached.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
It can't just stick them back on. Why would it waste the meal? But at the same time, if one's got severed legs, do you really want to see a legless Wendigo going hand over hand on tree branches chasing you?
I'm going to put that thing out of its misery.
Man, I wonder, can these things reanimate? I mean, that body, if they don't burn it? Have you heard any stories about that?
The Algonquin legend says if you don't kill it properly, it will come back.
Dang, man.
Like it'll grow its limbs back in that case? Or something
Hard
like that.
To say. Maybe it could, or maybe it just moves. It just the curse of the Wendigo hops to another body that doesn't have to regrow the limb. It just picks one that's still in better shape. So again, hard to say. I mean, this is an entity that I think is supernatural in origin. So what could it be limited to? We don't know. It could be crossing over from other dimensions. It could be, fully manifested in this plane of existence and still have the ability to possess other people. It's a supernatural entity. Who knows what it can do?
Yeah, supernatural. Have you heard any other stories about the Crees? Because I was going through my research, and one of it says they recorded regarding the Wendigo psychosis that the Cree they treated this as a buffer, not letting this happen by ingestion of fatty animal meats and drinking animal grease. and those treated may sometimes vomit ice as part of the curing process. That's strange.
That is bizarre. That's the first I've heard of them trying to cure a Wendigo. I'm not familiar with the Cree legend on that. I need to look that up.
Vomiting ice. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's now there's another one. Did you ever hear about it's Jack Fiddler? And known for powers as defeating the Wendigo. In some cases, this entailed killing people with window psychosis. As a result, in 1907, Fiddler and his brother Joseph were arrested by Canadian authorities for homicide. Jack committed suicide, but Joseph was tried and sentenced in life prison. He ultimately was granted pardon, but died days later in jail before receiving his pardon. I mean, people were back then. They were, if you were suspected of window psychosis, they were, killing you.
Well, and when you don't understand what's going on, it's very likely that these Wendigo hunters, so to speak, would see this psychosis and see this is going to infect the rest of the tribe, or this is going to infect the rest of the community, and would want to put it down. I mean, look at the Salem witch trials. Were they really making bargains with the devil, or were some of these people just accused of it and put to death? When paranoia sets in, and people get this mass hysteria that we've got to stop, we got to stop this evil. Atrocities have been committed down through the centuries. I mean, look at the Spanish Inquisition, put to death who were completely innocent. Again, the Salem witch trials. How many people did those little girls accuse of being witches who were probably just completely innocent?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, that's true. We see Lou Morano's scathing critique in 1985. It says should have killed off the cannibal monster with psychiatric drugs, I guess. And he says that the Wendigo, however, continues to seek revenge for its attempted scholarly execution by periodically duping unsuspecting passerbys. So it goes on to say that that the Wendigo psychosis wasn't really properly studied. I guess that's what they're getting at.
Well, psychology is always an ever-expanding field. They're always exploring new psychoses. They're finding, new things that they're diagnosing people, and as they have a continued exploration and understanding of the human brain and how it works, more things will come to light. I mean, I was born in 1970. When I was a kid, nobody ever heard the word autism. Nobody knew what it was. Yeah. And how many kids were basically just considered bad kids because they probably had autism, and they couldn't help themselves. I mean, but as the science continues to improve, they're going to identify more things that are could be wrong with the human brain. God knows how many things that were once considered a monster or just an aberrant somebody who was possessed by the devil or something like that. How many of that down through the centuries could have actually been some sort of mental illness? We may never know. Yeah,
it seems like the Wendigo, since it's a spiritual entity, we understand that our perception of reality, what we see around, is much more expanded, and so is the audio. So, is it possible that these things, these beings, these spiritual beings, and I know it's just the Wendigo, is it possible that they're constantly looking at us, in the woods, in our homes? It's just to think about it's crazy, but that's what science says, that we don't see everything in our spectrum with our eyes we have, and we don't hear everything. We only have a small glimpse of reality. So what have you heard in your studies regarding this? Our perceptions being limited.
Well, it's like, for example, if you own a cat, you have a cat just sit and stare at one point down the hallway?
Oh man, I hate when you do that.
It's creepy.
Cats see things that we can't. The anatomy of their eye structure, they see a much broader range of the physical light spectrum than we do. So God knows what they're seeing. I mean, if we could see what the cats were seeing, we might be terrified. So could those creatures be all around us at all times? Yeah. Could there be spiritual beings walking around us right now? Yeah, very much so. We just can't see it. We can't perceive it. So anything is completely possible. We don't know. We don't know the extent of what goes on around us on a daily basis. We're only seeing, like, I think it's less than 10% of the available light spectrum.
Right.
So there's a huge amount going on around us that we'll never see. It would be interesting if somebody could invent a camera that could capture the full light spectrum and then convert it to what we can see. So that would be a really cool thing if somebody could, technology got to the point where we could explore the whole light spectrum around us. But then again, it might be so terrifying it'd drive people mad.
Well, yeah, there was a guy. There is a guy out there that supposedly is taking pictures of the other realm. He won't release, how he came up with this contraction. But anyways, there's a man named Dr. Santilli who invented the dual telescope. Basically, it's a regular telescope. It's a dual telescope with a secondary telescope, focused and aimed at the same point. It's called the Santilli telescope, and it's a dual concave lens. And what he has done is, if he points it at a certain direction with the camera, he can take pictures of things in the invisible light spectrum. Now, when I researched this telescope, you can't find it anymore. You can't buy it. And I was on the phone not too long ago with Jonathan Dover from he's come on Unsolved Mysteries, and he's on Skinwalker Ranch. And I asked him about that, and he says, he's never heard about that, but he was going to pass it on to, Travis or whatever. But that's something that, if I could get a hold of a Santilli telescope, I would, because I'd like to see, point at, down the street or in the sky and see, if there's anything out there.
I would very much like to have something like that. Again, I'm the kind of guy. My mother used to say when I was a child that I would blunder in where angels feared to tread, and that's kind of been the way I've lived my life. I would love to see stuff like that, but at the same time, there are lots of people who be like, no, don't want to know. But yeah, I would be the guy that would like, yeah, crack that thing open. Let's take a look and see what we're seeing on the other side. So yeah, there would be a lot of people like me who would want to know, and there'd probably be just as many who'd be like, I am not interested whatsoever to find out what's on the other side, because it might drive you mad.
I don't know, DA, maybe we should both make a concerted effort to try to find one of these dual telescopes, because I think that you could probably take snapshots of something out in the woods that you can't see with the naked eye. I mean, something that thermal vision can't see, something that night vision can't see. You're looking to the invisible spectrum now. This is something beyond Santilli dual telescope.
How do you spell Santilli?
I don't know. I have to look that up.
Sounds Italian.
I'll take a guess.
Yeah, Dr. Santilli. That's his name. He had this. I think he still has a website, and you can like research it on like on Amazon, whatever, or eBay, but you can't buy it anymore. It's not available. And it's just like gone. Like, I'm okay. Like, why can't we?
So
buy
I can
this?
reach out to him and find out why.
Yeah, I'm sure he has a website. I just don't remember what the. Let's see if I can find him real quick. Santilli Telescope on Facebook, custom reviews, twin surveillance, Galileo, and AMP. You can't get it on Amazon. It's not available anymore. But yeah, he has a website. I can send it to you later, and you can check it out.
Great.
Oh, it's called. I think it's called Thunder Energies Corporation.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know if you find one. I mean, you'd be very lucky, because for me, with that telescope being invented so long ago, it wouldn't surprise me. Like, for example, that movie They, when they put those, Roddy Piper puts those glasses on, and you can see like these aliens and stuff. It won't surprise me if they have that technology now where they can see in the visible light with goggles.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Technology is constantly evolving. I mean, look at what we were capable of at the end of World War II versus what we're capable of now.
Yeah.
Who's to say what visual technology we'll be able to do in the next 20, 30 years? I think it's just a matter of time that they could do something like that if, and that's a big if the government hasn't done it already and just doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool if you or myself can get a hold of one of those telescopes. I don't know how we would do it, but I mean, I think it'd be amazing.
Rank and file public just aren't ready for what they're going to see. But I think that decision should be made by us, not made for us.
Yeah, could you imagine the discoveries could be made with
It'd
that?
be pretty fantastic.
I think it's a disservice for people like you and I and Lionel that are want to have more produce more evidence of these things in the spiritual realm, because we know there's a spiritual realm. We just want to peer into it and see what's going on, what's out there, what they look like. And there's so many different things in this world that we don't know about. We don't know about much about the Dogman, about Bigfoot. And another thing about Wendigo, I read that it also has the ability of invisibility. Have you heard that?
Yes, like a cloaking ability.
Right.
I've heard it is able to basically hide in plain sight. But being a hunter, that ability might be explainable because every deer I've ever shot, the only reason I saw it because it moved. There's a lot to be said for just standing stock still. It is very hard for us to see something that's not moving, especially if it's like standing among a similar colored background.
Yeah.
If you've got a deer standing in dry grass and it's not moving, unless you're really good at spotting the patterns, you're probably not going to see it. I know guys that'll just go, there it is.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of those guys. It's got to basically move before I see it. Yeah. And that's even after years and years of looking for them in the woods. So there will be some people that could probably see it, but there would be others that would be like, I don't get it. I don't see it.
Yeah. Do you have any stories on people succumbing to a Wendigo attack?
Well, just primarily the ones we spoke of already. But there are dozens and dozens and dozens of Native American accounts of them taking people from villages. The most famous being the Swift Runner case,
right.
The Wendigo Psychosis case from the bus in Canada. But when you look at the missing 411, how many of these hikers went missing in the winter and in remote locations? So, again, like a missing 411, there's no one clear explanation, just like with the cattle mutilations. There's no one clear explanation that fits all the criteria. So I think much like the cattle mutilations, I think the missing 411, there are multiple things that are doing it, but they're all enough in that really bizarre disappearance to trip the missing 411 criteria, because he doesn't just report missing persons. They have to meet a very specific set of criteria. So, could some of it be Wendigo? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Could some of it be, people that have just, wandered off the trail and vanished? And again, entirely possible. But I don't think there's any one answer for what's happening to the missing 411. I don't think there's one clear answer for what's taking people that get missing on hiking trails. But just because one person was taken by a serial killer doesn't mean the next one wasn't taken by a Wendigo. Yeah.
What can a person possibly do if they suspect a Wendigo in their vicinity? What do you, in your professional, on this, compared to me, what do you recommend they do if they suspect a Wendigo or if they see one hanging around the house one night? Are there any prayers or any, Native American things that, they should do, any rituals, et cetera?
Well, I would definitely say that whatever your religious beliefs are, I would do something within your religious base, within your comfort zone. Prayers, lighting candles, burning incense. If you want to talk to a Native American shaman, I would recommend that as well. I mean, just because you're Catholic doesn't mean you can't have a Jewish rabbi bless your house.
Right.
Just because you're Pentecostal doesn't mean you can't talk to a Native American shaman. Uh, so if you feel like you're really being threatened, I would pull out the stops and go with multiple layers of protection. I would have talk to a Native American shaman. I would have your local preacher from your church come pray with you at your house. I would keep candles burning. I would burn incense. I would burn sage. Put salt around your house. Do anything you think is going to keep it away. But you always something keyed into faith, because these are evil entities. Something faith-based prayer. Certainly the power of faith will protect you against evil. And if you are out in the woods or you are away from home and you hear something call your name, for God's sake, don't answer it.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's probably the creepiest experience if that ever happened to me. Something calling my voice, my name, like, oh my God, I'm out of here, man.
But you look at the time, it's time to go.
Yeah, really. Do you have any, have you come about any physical evidence of the Wendigo, any photographs, any, like game cameras, footprints, scratches on homes, cars?
I've heard of cases of people finding scratches on their cars. I've heard of people finding like scratch marks on their windowsill, like something was trying to get into their house. I've never heard of a good picture of a Wendigo. I've never heard of anybody getting a picture of one. Most game camera footage that I've seen that people put forth and say they think it was a cryptid, they're either just a very small portion of something moving by the camera at a high rate of speed. But I've never seen a good picture of any cryptid on a game camera. I think very much like wolves and deer, I think that these creatures are able to see the IR spectrum, because most game cameras are tripped by an IR sensor. I think they can see the IR beam, and I think they avoid it. But as far as physical evidence of the Wendigo, mostly what we've got is eyewitness accounts and years of interactions with the Native Americans.
So this spiritual being, the Wendigo, has embodied obviously some type of corporal. It has a body. It's flesh and bone. Do you think this thing is more than likely a cave dweller, or does it hide in the trees with its invisibility? Because when I'm watching 411, when they're looking for these people, I never see them look up in the trees, because I did watch 411, and there was a lady that was encamped on a tree with her hunting chair, and she said something that looked like saran wrap was in front of her, jumping from tree to tree. It
looked like saran wrap?
It looked like something out of Predator.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like a shimmering effect?
Yeah.
I know that encounter you're talking about. What that could be, could it be a cloaked Wendigo, a cloaked Bigfoot, something along those lines? Yeah, but then again, she didn't get a clear enough image to say what it was. Mm-hmm. She did take some pictures with her cell phone that her husband analyzed, but they weren't able to draw anything out that was a clear enough image to say this is what that was. But if I recall from that sighting, they also had a UFO sighting over a nearby marching band field. Mm-hmm. So could it have been an alien? Yeah, entirely possible. Again, we don't know what that was. But I think Wendigo themselves, as far as dwelling, they're going to look for someplace dark and cool enough where they can hang meat, because these things will store food for long-term usage. They're the embodiment of starvation. They're going to try to protect themselves for a long winter. Again, that's stories of them not immediately killing people that they've taken. Hang them in the cave, or hang them from rafters of an old mine or something like that, someplace dark and damp where they can get away from the light and where they can eat their kills at their leisure. So yeah, I would say that as far as dwellings go, it's going to be a cave or something similar in the ground, well away from the light, well away from people. But if you find them in the trees, they're hunting.
So you have heard of people being actually abducted by the Wendigo?
Lots of stories of people that just went missing from their home, or just went missing while walking a trail. There was one lady, I think it was in Manitoba, her husband reported her missing, and she went missing between the house and the car. her tracks just disappeared about halfway to the car.
Wow.
So what got her? Who knows? There's no way to know what got her, but her tracks go off the porch and almost made it to the car, and then she was just gone.
That's wild.
So, yeah, these things could very well be abducting people right under our noses.
But I mean, if that's a Wendigo, I mean, how does that happen? I mean, are they sucking these people into another realm then? I mean, that's my own explanation.
Supernatural creature, hard to say. Or could it simply have moved so quickly that the only tracks it left were so vague that you couldn't make out what they were? I mean, look at the difference between a person's footprint from when they're walking and when they're running. A running track is very different than
Right.
walking. Who knows? The faster you go, maybe the less you're actually leaving behind. Or it was simply, something where it didn't appear as a track to them. Maybe they didn't recognize what it was. Or it might have grabbed her from the top of the house and taken her up over the top of the house.
That's crazy. Wow. Her footprints just stopped before she got to the car. I mean, that is...
One of the accounts in Maine was this guy reported that at night it would walk around his cabin, and then he'd hear its hooves, like the hooved feet walking around on the roof of his cabin. And then you look out the window and see the red eyes watching him from the woods. And he'd never leave his cabin after dark. So, yeah, they can climb.
So
it could. If she walked out off the porch to the car, it could have just reached down, grabbed her by the head, and off they went.
So what does this thing have? Goat legs or something?
We like the emaciated deer, like they talk about how it looked like an upright deer.
That's creepy. That's creepy. And I read a story. Go ahead.
I said, just kind of terrifying. You're like,
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There was an old story that I forget where it came from, but it's so long ago I read it. That people saw hoof prints. I think it was in the eastern part of the United States. There were hoof prints in the snow up people's sides of the walls, top of the rooftops, on cars. Did you hear about that story? There were like little like I don't know, hoof prints everywhere. It was just really strange. It's an old story.
I think I remember reading that.
Yeah, I mean that is creepy. There's, you've been in this longer than we have, and do you see the the information is cracking open now? More and more people with the internet, social media are coming forward with their sightings, what they reported seeing, and also you see some moles inside some pages that start infighting. Do you believe that's intentional to break up some of these groups?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there is a definite attempt to not only keep the field of cryptozoology looking like we're a bunch of crackpots,
right?
But anytime somebody comes forward with good evidence, they either get shut up or there is a concerted effort to discredit them. So I think that there are people who that's what they do is they lurk in these chat rooms or they lurk in these Facebook groups or they watch podcasts, and as soon as they see somebody getting too close to a subject, they start problems. These trolls will start infighting among the groups to try to discredit that and try to bring it down.
Right.
I very much think there's a concerted effort to keep cryptozoology as fringe science, make us look as crazy as possible.
Well, yeah. Also, when I was attending a church, it seems that not me personally, but just examining the arena. Anyone that comes with a cryptid story, a UFO story, this and that, they ostracize that person. Coining them as schizophrenic, some sort of psychosis. Now,
I'm just crazy.
Yeah, in my opinion, these things are real because I've seen these things. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I studied psychology, school of divinity, etc. Well, it's something doesn't mean much of anything when you say these things, but it brought a more understanding that there is another realm out there, and I think these churches today should teach people that just because you see these things, you're not crazy, and it causes some kind of with the churches, and I'm not pointing at any church, I'm just saying in general, some kind of cognitive dissonance. There's new information, so they don't know how to deal with it. So, you're crazy, you're schizophrenic, you're possessed, this and that. I'm here to say, no, that's not true. These things are real. I've seen shadow people. I've had sleep paralysis where I was held down. I've seen a headless apparition, a black glob of something with no head. I've seen UFOs. I've seen the night witch, the night owls. These things are real. I've never seen a dog man. I've never seen a Bigfoot, and I definitely don't want to see a Wendigo.
I would agree with not wanting to see a Wendigo. It's one of those things that, we've got to stop ostracizing people because they've had a sighting of something like this. When I interview people, when I talk to people that have had encounters or have witnessed something, I use the same techniques I used when I was a cop. I look for signs of deception. I look for the key elements of body language and posture that would indicate that they were being deceptive. But I've interviewed so many people that you can't fake the reaction of goose flesh up their arms when they, or when they're wringing their hands, or when you see them start looking around behind them. Those visceral reactions are tough to fake. When you see true fear on somebody's face, when they're talking about their cryptid encounter, that is a person I believe wholeheartedly, because it's very difficult to fake that level of fear, because there's physical changes that take place on your body that an actor can't duplicate. So it's to me that those are the telltale signs of people that are through traumatic encounter with one of these creatures.
Yeah, it's really strange too, because I don't know if this happens with Wendigo or Bigfoot or Dogman, but in my experiences, there's always like this whoosh, this ringing in the ear, back and forth, woo, woo, and then it seems like everything around me just stops, like time stops, everything goes silent. I wonder if have you heard of this happening with people that encounter the Wendigo?
Well, I know a lot of people that have, especially with cryptid encounters, have reported the woods around them or everything that's around them goes completely still. I personally have experienced that in the woods on a number of occasions, and it is a really terrifying feeling. I mean, it's when you're basically your senses go on high alert, and you're looking for anything that can be causing that that feeling of fear. But I think in the cases of like the Wendigo, I think that fear that it instills in you encourages it. I think it enjoys that fear. And I don't think it's just that they want to eat you. They want to terrify you. And I don't know if that's, quote unquote, makes the meat taste better or something like those lines, but I think they definitely want to generate fear, and that's why I think it's the Wendigo. The true Wendigo is a supernatural creature, because when you start dealing with the supernatural, our fear is what they feed on.
Yeah. Well, this was a great episode. Thank you, DA, for coming back on and explaining the Wendigo. There's so much history to it. I encourage people, if you're interested, to research it more. DA has a website. He has books. DA, you want to let people know where to find your work, and that way they can study more on the Wendigo and Dogman and all the other cryptids you cover?
Absolutely. You can find all of my books at daroberts.net. I've got a number of different series that cover different cryptids. Again, my books are fiction, but I do plan on having nonfiction books coming out as I begin compiling more of my notes about Bigfoot and Dogman and Wendigo and things like that. But the stories I tell at the moment are fiction. But they are based on the behaviors of the creatures are based on real stories. So I try to bring as much realism to the stories as I can, and to give the most enjoyable read possible. So you can check out all my books at daroberts.net. You can find them on Amazon. Amazon.com has all of them. And if you want to check out our podcast, the podcast is called DAX Machina. We cover cryptid topics and talk about monsters and all things that go bump in the night and crazy conspiracy theories, and just really get into the whole 9 yards. So hopefully you folks will check that out as well. You can check that out if you go to YouTube, you can search D.A. Roberts author, or you can look up DAX Machina. Both of those will take you to it. But our show is live at 8 p.m. Central every Wednesday and Saturday night, and I hope to see you guys in the chat.
Excellent. You can find us Sabbath at Midnight on Facebook and Instagram, and you can also find D.A. Roberts on Facebook. thank you, DA, for coming on. Hold on for a second after we wrap up, and we'll talk to you again soon.